So the clock is ticking along as we get older. What's the truth behind this whole biological clock thing? Hey, welcome to Unapologetically Child-Free, where you find that child-free community that you never knew existed and now you can't live without. We're talking today about this biological clock that everyone keeps telling me that's just ticking and ticking and ticking, and I guess is gonna go kaboom. I'm Maggie Dickens. I'm a licensed therapist and your child-free hype woman, here to talk about all things living life without kids and without apology. And that includes talking about women as if they're machines, as if there's a clock somewhere in my uterus or ovaries or somewhere. Many people like to use this concept against child-free women to say that we are flawed, we are broken in some way, that there's something quote unquote wrong with us. And I have a lot of issue with all of that language. But before I get into that piece, let's also talk about the fact that this language about the child-free being broken, because many of us say, I've never felt this ticking clock. Some people talk about having the batteries removed from their clock. When people hear this, they come back to us and say, you can't fight science. You're going to change your mind one day. Your body is going to remind you what you're here for, and all of these absurd things. They're going to be saying things like, you can't fight the urge. It's natural. It's a part of you. Oh my God, I can't even keep myself serious. Why do they talk about women's bodies like we're machines? Stupid. So today, I'm putting my therapist hat on this child-free body, and I'm going to be talking in depth for a short period of time about the biological versus societal influences in what is the biological clock? Is it real? If it is, what does it really mean? And how does it apply to child-free people? And if you've been around the unapologetically child-free community for any amount of time, you have probably seen many of these bingos that are related to this idea that women were built primarily or solely to have children, and that the biological clock is an example that validates that belief system. If you haven't been here long, go check out some of my other videos, because the comments, I can feel them coming on from men who are going to tell me that everything that I'm going to be saying about the societal influence in our belief system of the biological clock is wrong. I can just see it. All these men, they're going to tell me that I'm wrong about my own body. They don't have a uterus. I do. They don't have ovaries. I do. But somehow I'm wrong. Get ready. I know I am. All right, let's get into the science. Is the biological clock real? Yes, the biological clock is real. Stop. Before you go to exit out and say, hey, this child-free woman doesn't know what she's talking about, wait a second. There are things that we need to talk about. And the first thing is that every single living thing has a biological clock. Let's break this down for just a second. Let's stop using the word biological clock. Every single cell has a lifespan, and that lifespan is finite. So at the birth of any cell, that cell is beginning to die. It makes me so happy to say to all the men that are going to be in the comments telling me that I am misconstruing everything, that you, sir, have a biological clock. Even your reproductive system has a biological clock. Keep watching. I'm going to tell you exactly what I mean. I'm going to link the articles that I'm referencing in the description below. So let's first start with the idea of how the heck do we know about a timeline within cells? And how does this have anything to do with the biological clock? Well, the first thing is that there were some scientists, and I think it was in the Navy, that were wanting to understand the rest, sleep, and wake cycle in order to reduce the amount of rest and sleep that people needed. And I'm assuming primarily those in the Navy. What that research was talking about was our sleep cycle, y'all. Our sleep cycle. It's talking about our circadian rhythm. And what it showed is that we need a certain amount of time to rest and rejuvenate. And that research is the foundation for where, in the 1970s, a male journalist, yes, you heard that right, a man who is not a doctor, came up with the term biological clock. So let's talk about what he got right. Yes, as ovary owners get older, the number of eggs that we have reduce. At birth, we have millions. We do not get any more in our life. And so what we are born with is all we're ever going to have. And we start with millions. By the time we hit puberty, we are at about 300,000. That is a huge drop down. So if we want to talk about a biological clock, it starts at birth, y'all. And we are like middle-aged at puberty, which kind of makes sense if we think about how long humans used to live. Additionally, the amount of eggs that we have do not magically evaporate when a woman turns 32, 33, 34, 35 years old. And this whole concept that, oh, you're in your early 30s, you're in your mid 30s, and so boom, you have no purpose in this world anymore because you are past your reproductive age is also flawed, because that came from one piece of research that was based on a study in France that began in 1670. Y'all, we are talking about understanding women's bodies to the point of being able to pinpoint when we are or are not at a reproductive age based off of something that people learned before electricity. What? So let's back up. Is the biological clock real? Yes and no. Yes, all of our cells have a timeline. Yes, our eggs will begin to reduce beginning at the moment we are born. And the concept of biological clock, that term and how it is used as a weapon against women, that is society. And the use of that word began in the 1970s from male journalists. So let's rewind a minute and let's put ourselves primarily in the United States in the 1970s. There is a huge women's liberation movement that is happening. Women are beginning to gain financial independence, being able to have a checking account on their own, being able to have a credit card on their own. Women have greater access to oral contraceptives. All of these things are happening. And the 1970s was also around the end of the single income being enough to support a family. And so it's right before the 80s when we start to see women needing to go into the workplace, not only wanting to, but also needing to. So the long and short of it is the term biological clock and the way that it is used is rooted deeply in sexism. Like most things that disproportionately affect women, this term was created by a dude with no medical knowledge. And so he used the idea that we have a circadian rhythm and our cells have a timeline and women are losing eggs over time, in addition to talking with some women who were saying that they felt this pressure to figure out how to, quote unquote, have it all, to have these careers that they wanted or that they needed, and to fulfill the duty of becoming a mother. So let's listen to the language that I just said. There's this pressure to figure out how to live their life and to have a child. Where is this pressure coming from? There is no research that I have found that suggests that the pressure is coming from the ovaries or that the pressure is coming from the uterus or that the pressure is coming anywhere biological aside from the thoughts in our head that we have gotten from the society around us. Just as we are seeing right now with the decline in birth rate and so many people losing their ever-loving minds over the fact that women don't want to have kids or we're postponing having kids or we're having less of them, a similar thing was happening back in the 1970s with the increase of access to oral contraceptives and with women having more power in their lives financially, in their careers, etc. We're seeing a drop in birth rates. Let's also keep in mind there was a baby boom after World War II. That is where the boomers term comes from. So anytime you have a boom, I would assume that there is going to be some type of a drop period. However, the world is now freaking out and saying, oh, it's because all the women want to go out there and have sex and they don't want to have babies and they're irresponsible. So they just started slut shaming everyone and making the choice to not have children or delay having children into this moral issue. So much so that there was a second article that came out around the same time in response to this original article that a psychiatrist, so a medical professional, a psychiatrist was quoted at saying this biological clock is coined withering womb syndrome. What? Would we ever say that someone who is struggling with erectile dysfunction, that they are having a withering penis syndrome? No. And so when we're thinking about the fact that in the 1970s, we're seeing a birth rate decline, and we're also seeing women delaying pregnancy. So I think the percentage is around 36% of women had not had a child by the time that they were 30. This also talks about being child-free is not a trend. I'm going to do a video on that in the future. I'll drop that in the description when it goes live. I've also seen so many people have a hard time with women wanting to own their own decisions and wanting to own their own bodies. And if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, there are people like the billionaires of the world, Elon Musk, saying that child-free people should lose the right to vote. We've seen even lawmakers getting on the floor of the House or the Senate of their state and talking about how the decline in birth rates is reducing the amount of labor force that we will have in the future. So just like back in the 1970s, there's this panic that's happening today that happened back then. And this panic is to counteract labor. We have been seeing this resistance to women's liberation since it started. And so when you're seeing all of these comments that I'm sure are going to come into this video and that have been on several of my previous videos of people saying that I, as a child-free woman, am going against what my body was built for, is really misunderstanding the science. The science says, yes, I have a finite number of eggs. Every single second that goes by, these eggs are disappearing. There's a fancy word for it, but I don't remember what it was. And so are the other cells in my body. From the moment that I am born, I am beginning to die. So is everyone else. Part of my reasoning for being child-free is that I want to soak up every single moment of this life that I have. And I'm not going to listen to a journalist from the 1970s telling me that my body is a machine and I need to just listen to the ticking. Before all of the moms come in and say, I felt that biological clock, I turned 30 and it was as if there was just this switch that turned on. I get it. I hear you. I have a friend who is in major baby fever right now and talks about it being as if she is in the desert and just dying of thirst. And I'm also here to tell you that that urge that you're experiencing, according to Frederick Wyatt, that this urge that we're having is using biological terms and concepts to explain a psychological process and experience. So yes, you feel this urge because we've been conditioned since we were little to become mothers. We have been told since we were young that our bodies were meant to produce children. And we have been told that you are a geriatric pregnancy after what, like age 30? I don't know. I've never been pregnant. But we have all of these external pressures, these external influences. We have religions that tell women that their sole purpose and God's plan for them is to be a vessel to have children, which kind of goes back to that whole idea that women have a clock, that we are these machines, that we are no longer autonomous, that we are not human. We are a vessel. We are a machine. We are a clock. And to those people who believe that that is true, here's what I have to tell you. Get off my channel. This channel is not for you. The comment section is not for you because you're believing, fight evidence to prove you wrong. You're believing something that has nothing to do with you. So what do we know about the biological clock? We know that that term is made up to further marginalize women, rooted in wanting to strip away the rights of women to live their own lives. We do know that women have a finite number of eggs, and eggs are one part of a woman's fertility. We also know when women do feel this urge to have a child, it is a psychologically based urge. It is based in what we have been told parenthood will be. It is based in what we fear will happen if we don't have a child by a certain age. We are listening to these external sources. The urge is not coming from our cells. The urge is not coming from our ovaries and our uterus. It is coming from society that says, because we have those things, we must use them, or there's something wrong with us. There's not a lot to say about this biological clock, aside from if you are like me and you know that your body is not telling you that you have to have a baby in order to be fulfilled as a person, and that you know that you can find fulfillment in so many other ways, please drop a comment and let me know some of those ways that you are fulfilling your life and that you're resisting that societal belief of a biological clock. And so to wrap up, in my favorite way, I'm going to tell you something that I'm loving right now as an expat here in Portugal, and that's the fact that it's sunny outside. I live for sunshine. I wish I had a job where I could just go sit on my computer and work outside in the sunshine. Don't forget that one of the best ways to connect with other child-free people who fully understand that this biological clock is a whole bunch of BS is to join the Unapologetically Child-Free Social Hour that we're having on March 1st at 9 p.m. Western European time. And I cannot wait to hang out with y'all. Check out the description for the link. It is free, and I love meeting new people, and it's a great way to begin building your child-free community. And until next time, keep living unapologetically child-free. Ciao, y'all.